1.10.
Fatos began to look very carefully at the coffee grounds in Chris's cup and to tell him what she could see. I remember that the first thing she said was that she could see sacks of money. And this was very accurate because Chris had worked in Saudi Arabia for several years and had earned a lot of money there. She also said that she could see a blonde lady. Well, Carla, Chris's girlfriend at the time, was blonde, so that was spot on too. But then Fatos suddenly looked very serious, and she said, "I can see somebody in your family who is sick, very sick, at this moment." I remember thinking, oh no, don't ruin a nice evening. But Chris is a very laid-back kind of person, and he didn't seem to be too worried by what she'd said. He just said, "Well, as far as I know, the people in my family are okay." Chris is an only child, and his mother lived with her sister. They were both in their 70s. Fatos said one or two more things, and then we asked the waiter for the check and said our goodbyes. It was a slightly weird end to what had been a very enjoyable evening. I can remember feeling relieved that I had said no when Fatos asked me if she could read my coffee cup. Chris and I got a taxi back to our hotel. The next day, Chris had a free morning because it was my turn to do the teacher training session in the hotel. So he went out early to go sightseeing in Istanbul. Around 9 o'clock, I got a call on my cell phone. It was Chris's girlfriend, Carla, calling. She told me that she needed to talk to Chris immediately, but that he wasn't answering his cell phone. I could tell by her voice that she had some very bad news for him, and I immediately thought of what Fatos had said the night before, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I asked Carla what had happened, and she told me that Chris's aunt had died suddenly in the night. So, was it just a spooky coincidence? Or did Fatos really see what she said she saw in the coffee cup? I spoke to her before I left Istanbul, and I told her that Chris's aunt had died the night we had dinner. She wasn't at all surprised, and she just said, "Yes, I saw in the cup that someone in his family was near death, but I didn't want to frighten him, so I just said that the person was very sick." All I can say is that I always used to be very skeptical about fortune-telling, but now, well, I'm not so sure.
1.11. 1.
Well, Carla, Chris's girlfriend at the time, was blonde, so that was spot on too.
2.
But Chris is a very laid-back kind of person, and he didn't seem to be too worried by what she'd said.
3.
It was a slightly weird end to what had been a very enjoyable evening.
4.
So, was it just a spooky coincidence?
5.
I always used to be very skeptical about fortune-telling.
1.12. 1.
I heard a noise in the middle of the night.
You did? What kind of noise?
2.
You don't believe in ghosts, do you?
No, I don't.
3.
I don't believe you really saw a UFO.
I did see one. It couldn't have been anything else.
4.
I've never been to a fortune teller.
Neither have I.
I have. It was really interesting.
1.13. 1.
I like cats, but my husband doesn't.
Sally's coming tonight, but Angela isn't.
2.
I loved his latest novel.
So did I.
I haven't finished yet.
Neither have I.
Andrew's a doctor, and so is his wife. 3.
I don't like shopping online.
I do. I buy a lot of my clothes online.
4.
I went to a psychic yesterday.
You did?
I'll make the dinner.
You will? That's great.
5.
You didn't lock the door?
I did lock it. I know I did.
Sylvia isn't coming.
She is coming. I just spoke to her.
6.
You won't forget, will you?
She can speak Italian, can't she?
1.14.
I dreamed that I saw a ghost last night.
You did? So did I. How spooky.
I don't believe in fortune telling.
You don't? I do.
1.15.
You don't like horror movies, do you?
I do like them. It's just that sometimes they're too scary.
1.17. What's in your signature?
Our signature is very much part of the way in which we present ourselves to the world, so it can definitely give us some clues about the kind of person we are and how we feel about ourselves. As you know, a person's signature usually consists of a first name and a last name, or an initial and a last name. Your first name represents your private self, how you are with your family, and your last name represents your public self, the way you are at work or school and in your social life. If you use only initials, either for your first name or your last name in your signature, this means that you are more secretive and protective about either your private or public self. Now, look at the space between your name and last name. Are the two names very close together, or is there a reasonable space between them? The more space there is between your name and your last name, the more you wish to keep these two parts of your personality separate.
1.18. The size of your signature.
Now let's look at the size of your signature. If your first name is bigger and more prominent in your signature, this usually means that your private self is more important to you than your public self. If your last name is bigger and more prominent, this probably means that your public self is more important to you. If your whole signature is very big compared with the rest of your writing, this usually means that you are a self-confident person. Some people actually sign in capital letters, which suggests that they may be big-headed or even arrogant, rather than just self-confident. On the other hand, people who sign their name with a very small signature tend to be insecure and have low self-esteem.
1.19. The legibility of your signature.
Another important factor is how legible your signature is. In other words, how easy it is to read. A legible signature tends to mean that you're a person with clear ideas and objectives. On the other hand, if your signature is difficult to read, this may imply that you're somebody who doesn't think very clearly, and that you may be disorganized or indecisive. It can also mean that you're secretive. Generally speaking, the more illegible your signature is, the less assertive you probably are as a person.
1.20. The angle of your signature.
Finally, I want to say something about the angle of your signature. That's to say, whether your signature is horizontal or goes up or goes down on the page. A rising signature, one that goes up, means that you are the kind of person who, when you're faced with problems, will work hard to overcome them. You're a determined person, and probably optimistic and ambitious. A descending signature, that is, one that goes down, suggests that you're the kind of person who gets disheartened or depressed when you're faced with problems, maybe because you are not very self-confident. A horizontal signature, one that goes straight across the page, usually indicates a person who is well-balanced and emotionally stable, and someone who is generally satisfied with the way their life is going. But it's worth bearing in mind that the angle of our signature may change at different times of our lives, depending on how we're feeling.
1.21. 1.
Some people actually sign in capital letters, which suggests that they may be big-headed or even arrogant.
2.
A descending signature suggests that you are the kind of person who gets disheartened or depressed when you are faced with problems, maybe because you are not very self-confident.
3.
A horizontal signature usually indicates a person who is well-balanced and emotionally stable.
1.22.
Bad-tempered.
Good-tempered.
Open-minded.
Narrow-minded.
Absent-minded.
Easygoing.
Laid back.
Tight-fisted.
Two-faced.
Strong-willed.
Self-centered.